Dominic, I just texted that. Unfortunately, we don't have our HDMI cord for the camera, but I think the angle I have it at right now should be fine.
Okay.
Can I help in any way?
Okay. We're winging it.
That's fine. That's fine. Do we need microphones? Are these too good?
It should be, that should be more than fine. I can see right there the audio coming in, so
Perfect.
yeah. And I'll like give you a symbol of like up if we think we need microphones, but right now it looks like it's gonna be fine.
Great. Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah, of course.
Hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm Jackie. Hi again, Eric. How are you?
All right, I think we've got everybody. If the two candidates wouldn't mind coming up to the podium, I'm going to do just some introductions and talking about the rules. Well, welcome everybody to the 2022 CSG Presidential Debate. So we're going to do the presidential debate first, and then that'll be about 45 minutes of total time, and then we'll take a little bit of break, and then we'll do the vice presidential debate and conclude by 7 o'clock. There's food and drinks in the back for those that haven't had the chance to get them yet. Before I introduce the candidates and the representatives from Michigan Daily, I just wanted to go over kind of some of the ground rules of the debate. As I mentioned, we have about 45 minutes for the debate. Each candidate is going to get a 90-second opening statement, and the Daily is going to ask about 9 questions for both the presidential and vice presidential debates, and generally about a minute or so to answer the questions. But since there's just 2 candidates this year, you can go over a little bit to about 90 seconds or so. But I'll keep track of time and make sure we're not going too far over. And then at the conclusion, we'll have 90-second closing statements for both candidates. And then a break between the two before we move on to the vice presidential debate. But before we get to the introduction of the candidates, I'd like to thank Carolyn from CSG Election Commission for kind of putting this event together, and I'd like to introduce the 2 members of the Michigan Daily. First is Dominic Coletti, and then Nirali Patel. They're going to be asking the questions of each candidate, and also the Michigan Daily is live streaming the debate as we go. And I also wanted to remind everybody the election date of March 30th through the 31st. So please vote. All right. Before we get to the opening statements, I'd like to introduce the 2 presidential candidates. First, to my right, Noah Zimmerman. Noah Zimmerman is running for presidential candidate under the Envision Blue Party. He's a junior in LSA, doing a double major in political science and history with a minor in writing from the Sweetland Center. He served as a representative on the CSG Assembly and was elected to the Rules Chair position. Next, we have Erica Nielsen, running a junior pursuing a degree in political science and sociology with a minor in entrepreneurship. On campus, she is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority, incorporated in the NAACP UN chapter. So we give a brief round of applause for both candidates before we begin the debate. Okay, So by the luck of the draw, Erica will give the first opening statement, and you have 90 seconds.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Erica Nielsen, and I'm running to be your next student body vice president, or president, sorry. As president, I hope to really be a change maker. I always say things will get done regardless. I'm not somebody who will just sit around, make policies, but not really want anything to happen. I'm here for the students. My running mate Ron and I, we call ourselves diverse and dedicated because we're diverse in experiences and dedicated to you all, the students. We really want to see change happen, not just something that the university says is for the students, but doesn't really have any input. We're going to give students a seat at the table that they belong to.
Okay, next, Noah, your opening statement.
Is this working? Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Noah Zimmerman. I use he, him, his pronouns. And with my good friend and running mate, Jackie Hillman, I'm running to be your next Central Student Government President. This past year, I've had the pleasure to serve on the CSG Assembly, supporting students' needs such as advocating for a Swipe It Forward M-Dining donation program, designing more accessible elections processes, and creating a mental health and well-being task force. In the upcoming year, I hope to implement a more comprehensive policy agenda that will impact students' everyday lives through practical policies, as well as continue upon the foundation of advocacy projects that previous CSG administrations have started. With this, and with my experience in CSG, I hope that will impact students' everyday lives, as well as represent the broad range of students that we have on campus. I hope that throughout this debate, we'll learn that Jackie and I are here to put students' needs above our own and create a campus environment that's conducive to student success. All in all, we want you, the students, to envision being leaders, envision upholding excellence, and at the end of the day, envision blue. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to start with the questions and turn over to the Michigan Daily. The first question goes to Noah.
The Michigan Daily reported on March 10th that starting in fall of 2023, the University of Michigan will launch new diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in a 2-year transition period. DEI has been an ongoing effort for the Central Student Government. CSG has recently launched a social media campaign for Black History Month where all Assembly members were required to feature key Black figures in American history on their Instagram. CSG has also passed a resolution on expanding funding from $3,000 to $10,000 to help raise money for anti-racism projects on campus. How do you plan to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts among student organizations on campus?
You're first.
All right, this is a really important goal that we want to try to emphasize through our administration. With student organizations, we have this branch called the Student Organization Committee that falls under the executive purview. They give out funding through SOFC, which is the Student Organization Funding Committee, as well as help students build their base with the Wolverine Consulting Group. We think sometimes there's issues with transparency in a lot of the competitive student organizations that recruit, and we want to make sure that the recruitment processes are open as possible. We also want to make sure that if student orgs aren't abiding by these rules and regulations, that we're not providing funding to them, because we know that without student orgs making their processes as transparent as possible, we don't know what those recruitment tactics look like. And so making sure that we emphasize this, as well as education through continued bystander intervention training and some other SOFC regulations to make sure that our student organizations are as diverse and equitable as possible.
Okay, Erica, same question.
Yes, so diversity, equity, and inclusion is what my running mate and I are all about. We have gone to the students, we have gone to La Casa, we've gone to BSU, we've gone to the Michigan Arabs, and we've asked them, how can we better give you all a seat at the table? That's what we're doing. We're going out there, we're discovering their needs, and through that, we are increasing DE&I by giving them a place where they can truly feel welcome, not only in student government, but at the university. We intend to continue this work and do even more than that. Increasing future Wolverines' place here at the university, making them feel more welcome, showing them that DE&I is a priority for us and for the university. So what the Michigan Daily did is just, what we're going to do more of. We're going to increase what we need to do.
The next question for the daily, and this time, Erica, you'll be first.
Last month, the University of Michigan Campus Farm officially committed to carbon neutrality and pledged to achieve neutrality by 2026. In March 2021, the President's Commission on Carbon Neutrality released their final recommendations, including eliminating Scope 1 emissions, which result from direct on-campus sources, by 2040, and achieving carbon neutrality for Scope 2 emissions from purchased electricity by 2025, as well as establishing net zero goals for indirect emissions by 2025, along with other strategies according to the PCCN statement. What is your vision for the future of the university's carbon emissions in working towards the goal of achieving carbon neutrality?
Great, love that question. So we just want to make the university more sustainable. We want to increase recycling projects because we want to lessen the university's carbon footprint. We also want to work with students who are more involved in, the environment and find out even more so what the university needs to do. Because as somebody who's a political science major, I know a little bit, but I believe that I can always learn more about what the university needs in terms of, making the university more sustainable. So recycling, seeing where we can replace certain gaseous, instruments on campus and making them more electric to better, make the university more sustainable.
Okay. No?
Our focus is on creating a sustainable mindset in our student body. We think coming into this next year, we'll have a new university president, we'll have a new provost, and we think it's going to be really crucial to create relationships based on that and treat it as a transition year where we can emphasize sustainability as something that the student body not just wants, but needs. Another thing that we plan on doing to promote this sustainable mindset is publishing CSG guides on how to live a more sustainable life, as well as continuing the initiatives that the CSG executive has been pushing this year, such as bag recycling programs, which we'd like to expand. We'd like to start a compost bin delivery system, working with the Ann Arbor local government, and really promoting Ann Arbor public power to the university administration, as well as the Ann Arbor city government.
Okay. Thank you. And now we'll go to question number 3, and this time, Noah, you'll be first.
Since 2020, CSG has released several statements expressing their solidarity and support for communities on campus during times of political and social unrest. Notable statements and examples of global events include protests for George Floyd and Black Lives Matter, Palestinian solidarity, no more war in Ukraine, and farmers' protests in Punjab, and many more. For many students across various marginalized identities, this unrest can be very detrimental to their mental health. How do you plan to ensure cultural, political, and social sensitivity when addressing mental health on campus through your platform?
So I want to hone in on a very specific part of the question, and that is supporting our students. We have a broad range of students on this campus. We have 50,000 students, and we want to make sure that everyone feels supported in the best way possible. Our mental health initiatives are not great. We all know this. CAPS has long wait times, it's inefficient, and many students don't know about other resources on campus like Wolverine Wellness, Wolverine Support Networks, and many other student groups. Part of what Jackie and I want to do is work with the Dean of Students and Vice President of Student Life to create a program for first-year students as a pilot to notify them of where different wellness groups are, where different wellness events are, when they're going on, and make sure that it's as accessible as humanly possible. We also want to make sure that we're representing the broad array of identities on this campus and make sure that we're not just bumping people into one or two identities. People identify with different parts of who they are, and we want to make sure that when we're addressing these issues and we're supporting our students as best as possible, we're reaching this broad range.
Thank you. Erica?
So mental health is one of the main things on Ron and I's platform. We're very much advocates for mental health. As somebody who has struggled and who continues to struggle with mental health myself, you all can't see it, but I do have scars on my legs from just anxiety and depression. There's no other way to slice it. we intend to open up those conversations and show students that it's okay to talk about your mental health. And in terms of the different identities that we have on campus, we want to talk to them and bring them together and talk about their struggles and see where we can find unity. Because there's something magical about the way that, mental health and fighting for positive mental health brings students together. And so we want to bring them together, talk through them about what they're feeling about, the different things going on in this world, and see where we could talk to them about making things better, whether that's more protests, whether that's going to the students. And we recently talked to the Dean of Students, and there is a pilot program coming out to show students where resources are within the space that they're in. We want to increase that. We want to increase it. And should the pilot not go off as well, we want to make it even better. That's how we're going to help the students, because there's nothing that we can do without talking to them.
Thank you. Okay, next question, and this time Erica will be first.
CSG invests heavily in student organizations through Student Organization Funding Committee, Wolverine Consulting, and other initiatives. In a daily report, it was discussed that clubs must pay out expenses and provide a receipt to SOFC in order to get these expenses reimbursed by SOFC. This puts many new clubs at a disadvantage as there is not adequate funding to help cover their expenses before getting reimbursed by SOFC. How do you believe CSG could equally support all student organizations on campus?
Great, love that question. So we believe of giving, some initial funding, especially to these orgs, almost as a sign of good faith, because we don't think that students should be hindered from starting new orgs that they're passionate about just because they don't have the funding to do so. So we're going to give it to them, say here, as CSG, we trust that your org is going to be amazing. And we're going to give them funding, and then as they grow bigger and bigger, then they can apply for some of, the bigger funding like recipients. So that's what we're going to do. We're just going to give them a small amount to give the org a start as a sign of good faith, and then we're going to let them continue on it.
Thank you. Noah?
So this is something I'm actually very, very, very excited for. I served as the rules chair this year, which means that I help maintain the governing documents of CSG. And throughout this next year, I hope to make some of them as plain language as possible, abiding by federal plain language guidelines. When it comes to student organizations, especially the SOC and SOFC and WCG, we need to do a better job at figuring out how to make advanced payments and how to make sure that student orgs who need the startups and who have startup costs are able to pay for them without having to worry. A lot of students sometimes join student org leadership and have to pay out of pocket, or they can't even join the student org leadership because they have to work or they have to focus on their schoolwork. One initiative that we want to pretty revamp this year is the Leadership Engagement Scholarship, which will allow leaders on campus to join student orgs, create a cohort and community on campus. This is something that I worked on my freshman year, and I hope to continue in my senior year as president, and also make sure that the resources that WCG has, Wolverine Consulting Group, are publicized as best as possible, because they do help with startup costs and they do help with building the student org from the ground up.
Thank you. Next is question number 5, and Noah will be first this time.
In a report by the Michigan Daily, it was found that 1 out of 103 on-campus buildings at the university is named after a person of color. That building is the William Trotter Multicultural Center, a building that has its origins as a safe space for Black students on campus. In a recent article by the Michigan Daily, a letter to the Board of Regents was sent by CSG Deputy Policy Advisor Byron Brooks on February 22nd. This letter, titled "White Students Colonizing Trotter," urged the university to acknowledge and respect safe spaces for students of color on campus. Black students have expressed concerns that the space is being taken over by non-minority student groups, which they argue undermines the intent of the space. What are your plans in ensuring that the university builds, promotes, and respects safe spaces for students of color on campus?
Your first this time.
So we think this all comes down to education, and we think it all comes down to programming that we can do. We would like to do broad-based outreach to different groups on campus. We plan on creating an entire separate branch of the executive team to work with different community groups on campus, especially underrepresented populations. Jackie and I are not members of underrepresented populations, and we can't put ourselves in the footsteps of those who are. And so we want to make sure that we're doing as much outreach as possible to educate ourselves, but to also educate about the importance of safe spaces on our campus. We think a lot of times these issues arise from lack of kind of being up around it, being around these important issues. And we want to make sure that students who are coming to these spaces recognize where they are, recognize why it's important, and recognize how to build a better future and relationship with the safe spaces on campus.
Thank you. Erica?
Yes, so as somebody who is a person of color who often occupies myself at Trotter, I feel very deeply for this issue. One of the things that Ron and I have talked about many a time is giving, or it's like BSU, I see it at that table of discussing issues just like this. And so one of the things that we want to do is, talk to them, see how we can better make Trotter, that type of space for students of color to belong. And we understand, the feelings that they have. And so we do want to work harder to educate non-persons of color about why Trotter is so important. And the history is all around the walls. So even if that means giving a little tour of saying like, hey, this is why this space is so important to us. That's what we'll do. We'll talk them through it. We'll educate them because some people just don't know, and that's okay. But they will when we get elected.
Okay, question number 6 from Daly, please.
The crimes of former university athletic doctor Robert Anderson that have prevailed for 30 years has left over 900 former student athletes feeling trauma and neglect by the university. The stories of these survivors resonate with thousands of students on campus who have experienced sexual assault on campus. To many survivors, this trauma extends to the lack of justice served by the university and an ongoing culture of dismissing and neglecting survivors on campus. What measures will your leadership take to ensure that there is justice and accountability? What policymaking do you plan to implement to systemically address the criticisms of how sexual misconduct is addressed by the university at large?
And Erica is first this time.
Okay, great. So Ron and I are very well versed in this issue. We've gone out to the protests and talked with the John Vaughn and the other survivors about their experiences and about why this experience was so traumatic for them. And so one thing that we intend to do to better help the university handle this issue and to push the university to handle this issue better is bringing people like John Vaughn and the other survivors to the table and talk to them about what they think we should do. Another thing that we are going to do is talk to the higher ups and condemn this poor behavior because we believe that this was just unacceptable. So we're going to condemn them and we're going to say we need to do better at this. And in terms of policy making, we're going to make sure that in as many things that we can put out about it, we're going to talk about those experiences of the sexual assault survivors and continue to educate people on why this is such a big issue. And start as many initiatives as possible to make sure that there is sexual assault education. Yes, we all have the module at the beginning of the school year, but making sure that it sticks, that it's not just something at the beginning of the school year and that people forget about. We want to make sure that this is a continuous educational thing here at the university.
Thank you. Noah?
So I want to re-emphasize a point I made before, partially about our pilot program, but partially about the university's transition year. So first, when we talked about our wellness pilot program, we also want to put on different platforms for how to report different instances of sexual assault or misconduct and where to go, who's a confidential resource, which we think is a really important point, as well as how to go about the future. We want to support our students in mental health initiatives, but we also want to hold the administration accountable as best as possible. in this transition year, we're not just getting a new university president, we're not just getting a new university provost, but we're also getting a new director of SAPAC, which we think is going to be extremely important in providing for not just sexual assault and misconduct prevention, but also survivor empowerment. And we want to bolster these efforts within our CSG administration, working with the different groups on campus as best as possible to be able to provide for our students.
Thank you. Next, question number 7. Noah will be first this time.
In a recent article in the Daily, the One University campaign, a group of students and faculty that work to promote equity across the 3 U of M campuses, declined to support Regent Michael Beam because they have not seen him advocate for equity. Furthermore, the Board of Regents has expanded the Go Blue Guarantee to the Flint and Dearborn campuses, which provides students from households making less than $65,000 a year with free tuition. What are some ways that you think this issue of inequality among the university's campuses could be addressed?
So first and foremost, I want to address the point about expanding the Go Blue Guarantee. What we want to do is get rid of the GPA requirement that is already there. We think that this does not allow for equitable allocations of funding and student support within all 3 campuses. Also throughout this year, while I was on the assembly, I had the great privilege of working with people at Flint and Dearborn and their student governments. And we want to make sure that we're working as the University of Michigan student government together. We have a direct pipeline to our university administration who oversees all 3 campuses, as well as the Board of Regents. And we want to make sure that we're not underselling our position and not taking on this responsibility lightly. We want to make sure that cross-campus equity is something we are promoting in all of our policies, promoting the Students of Michigan delegate system, promoting ourselves within the Association of Big Ten Schools as a 3-campus body. And we want to make sure that we are doing everything in our power to advocate for those students, not just at Flint, not just at Dearborn, but on all 3 campuses.
Thank you. Erica?
Yeah, so another thing that I know I'm personally passionate about is making sure that everyone has the same amount of resources as possible. So as a part of our administration, we will go to Flint and we will go to Dearborn and say, okay, what do they have? What don't they have that we have? Whether that's more scholarships, whether that's, better dining practices, better housing practices. If we have it, we want to make sure that they have it too. Because we know that U of M Dearborn and U of M Flint, they are not lesser versions of UMich. We are all Wolverines. And so as a part of our administration, we will go to them, we will see what they need, and we will make sure that we push the administration to give it to them. Because we do not see a reason why there is a difference between the 3 of us. And on top of that, we will talk to their administration and we'll see, why isn't this something that they have? And then we'll make sure that we get the funding to give it to them.
Thank you. All right, now let's go to the Daily for question number 8.
As the university continues its search for a new president, the Presidential Search Committee has hosted listening sessions to gain feedback on the search process from students and community members. Many students interviewed by the Daily criticized the selection committee for being unrepresentative of both the Flint and Dearborn campuses, as well as of graduate students, because there are no GEO members on the committee, despite there being over 1,000 graduate students who are part of GEO. As this has been one university initiative to increase student voices, how do you hope to involve students in important decisions such as the continued presidential search?
And Erica, you're first this time.
So we will invite students to the meetings. We will offer them the chance to come in person and live stream the meetings and, show their support or their disdain and, just get them involved and get them active, because we believe that being politically active, whether in the wider scale of the federal government or even on the smaller scale of the university, is a big deal. So we intend to invite them. We intend to invite a little bit of everybody, as you could say, the graduate students, the minorities, undocumented transfer students, students from Flint, students from Dearborn, and we plan to bring them together the best way that we can and will, and get them involved in, who will be our next president, what activities will be made on campus, just a little bit of everything and a little bit of everybody. because we all need to be represented, and we believe that it's unfair if they're not.
Thank you. Noah?
So one of the things that I worked on this year, which I'm really proud of in the assembly, was a student search committee for the next president. Although there's been no finding yet, if there's not at the end of this legislative session, we'd like to continue it into the next, as well as bolster our efforts, because we know there's a timeline coming. This committee also worked with Flint, with Dearborn, with other members of the central student government, and as well as members of the university community. We want to include as many stakeholders as possible, and so we want to expand this committee a little bit, as well as make sure that any findings that come out of this, Jackie and I are representing to the Board of Regents, to the Presidential Search Committee, as well as to anyone that we need to, including as many voices as possible. This is something that we think is extremely important. Something I've referenced throughout this debate is that next year is going to be a transition year, and we need to make sure that the next university president goes through the strict scrutiny process of making sure that they have no sexual misconduct in their past, they have no academic violations in their past, that they are someone who is fit to lead this university.
Thank you. And to the next question from Michigan Daily. Noah will be first this time.
On January 15th, 2020, the Michigan Daily reported on students who have struggled to find adequate mental health resources on campus. That year, 57% of students reported to be overwhelmed with anxiety, and many students reported CAPS wait times were too long to be helpful. As well, in the report, students of color said CAPS did not adequately support them. With an increased demand for mental health services on campus, what is your proposal on distributing these services in an equitable and accessible way?
Yeah, so for us, it all comes down to making sure that we're promoting the models that we already have implemented and making sure they're as effective as possible, while also bolstering some other student support networks on campus. Right now, we're supposed to have the embedded model, which means that there could be a CAPS counselor in each school's unit home. So for example, I know the Moore building has a CAPS counselor for all SNTE students. We want to expand this embedded model to also non-academic units, such as Trotter, such as the Intercooperative Council, such as Hillel, such as the Greek Life System. We want to make sure that everyone has access to a counselor as best as possible. We know this won't address the long wait times and ineffective processes in the short term, but we see this as a long-term solution. And while we're working in the short term, providing other resources, such as continuing the comm subscription and expanding it, because it's one of CSG's biggest initiatives that we've had, as well as bolstering, like I said before, the other programs and student orgs that we have on campus that have the expertise to deal with these and support students.
Thank you. Erica?
As I've stated before, I've struggled and I continue to struggle with my mental health. This is not me, using it just to say it, but it's because I understand the struggles of these students and how they're feeling. I believe that CSG needs to provide more funding to CAPS, to Wolverine Wellness, to other initiatives. And, one thing that I know of is that one reason why students of color especially may not be feeling CAPS as much is because they might not have a counselor or as many counselors that look like them. So we want to encourage CAPS to hire more counselors of color and to promote those student groups and student wellness groups that prioritize, minority students. We want to also increase funding for different initiatives such as apps and things to make them more accessible, and also just make sure that mental health resources don't just get lost in an email, that they're out there for students to see and students to know and students to feel comfortable with, and knowing that there is something out there for you.
Thank you. Dominic and Early, am I correct that that's the 9 questions? All right. I've got one question since we have a little bit extra time, kind of given your answers previously. So both of you have mentioned the transition year and the importance of the new president. What are the characteristics that you look for in the next president of the University of Michigan? And Erica, you can go first on this one.
Some of the characteristics that I look for in the new president is somebody who is not just going to hide in their house and say, oh, but we're still doing this on behalf of the students. We're still promoting this initiative. No, I want somebody who is going to get out there and come talk to us. We're not aliens. We are people too. We are students that truly want somebody who's going to take the time to connect with us. I also want somebody who's open to diverse experiences and who's open to listening to them. Because if you're not hearing us, then what are you doing? How are you going to be our president? The last thing that I want is just somebody who is connected and who's willing to share those connections and just boost, productivity within the university, because we do need more resources. There are many of us that are looking for an internship. And so as a president, if you know somebody who says, hey, I can help the university with that, why aren't you doing it? So I want somebody who is going to sit down, do the work, and not just sit down in their house, but sit down with us.
Thank you. No?
Yeah, I think all of what Erica said are very important and very strong points. I also want to bring to the table that we need someone who's going to implement a sense of transparency in the university processes. We've looked at the failures of past administrations, and we need to move forward and heal as a campus community together. And when looking towards a university president, we need someone who's going to be transparent and honest with the student body. But we also need someone who's going to make sure that they're making the right decisions for us. Not too slow, not too fast, but taking in the well-informed research that we have through the experts on campus and making sure that they are implementing as best of an idea as possible for the students and making sure that they're taking into account student voices when they're doing so.
Thank you. And before we get to the closing statements, why don't we use this opportunity for each of you to ask each other a question about potential platforms or how you be as the president. And so first, Noah, you can ask a question to Erica.
Yeah. I will say, what do you think is the best characteristic that makes you fit to be president?
Of course, I love this question so much. The best characteristic is my drive. I am beyond driven to do things on behalf of the students, hence why Ron and I call ourselves diverse and dedicated. It's not just something that we thought of like, oh, that sounds good. No, we actually are dedicated to being there for the students and getting out and knowing them.
And Erica, do you have a question for Noah?
Given that you are not a person of color, how do you plan to represent the voices of students of color?
Great question as well. I think it all comes down to trying to talk to as many people and talk to as many groups as possible. As I said before, Jackie and I are not able to put ourselves in the shoes of students of color, not represented students on campus, but we want to make sure that we're listening as much as possible, educating ourselves, educating the campus community, and making sure that we're promoting an environment that is conducive to listening, learning, and acceptance.
Thank you. All right, and so now we have closing statements. You can take up to 2 minutes. And first is Noah.
All right, thank you. I'm going to reiterate something that I mentioned in my opening statement. Jackie and I are here to serve students. We're here to put students' needs above our own and create this environment that helps students. Our platform is very simply split into 2 parts. 30 action items that we'll hope to get done within our year of office, and 15 advocacy projects that we hope to build off the foundation of previous CSG administrations and also work with student organizations who have expertise on campus to create our own. With this, we hope to impact students' day-to-day lives, making sure that we are creating a positive change on this campus. We see Leaders Invest not just as a phrase, but as an opportunity, as I've said many times throughout this debate, for a transition year to heal as a campus community together. I hope that you'll take all this into consideration when voting, and that you'll vote for myself, Noah Zimmerman, and Jackie Hillman to be your next CSG president and vice president. Thank you so much for your time, and go Blue.
Thank you, and now Erica.
This has been an amazing debate, and I want to speak to not only you in this room, but you all on YouTube when I say, if you want to make change, you know who to vote for. There is a candidate up here who has gone out and spoken to these groups. And I'm not just talking about the cultural ones. I'm talking about we've also talked to the transfer students. We've gone to the protests. We've talked to John Bond. And then, there's the ladder. We have put ourselves out there and we've gotten to know them. We've gotten to know them by name and we've gotten to talk to the people. That's what makes us different. You know, we are diverse and dedicated. We have gotten out there and we've done the work. We are going to continue to do the work. As Wolverines, one thing that we're change makers, right? We're trying to be experts in our own field and we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to make history. Well, one thing that we can do now as Wolverines, as leaders in best, is make history with me. You all have the opportunity, and hopefully I have the blessing of being your first Black female president of the student body. This is not something to take lightly. This is diversity in action. This is everything that the university says it's trying for. So we need to be leaders in best. We need to be history makers. And you can do that next week.
Well, thank you everyone for attending the presidential debate. We're going to take about a 5 or 10 minute break before the vice presidential one. I'd like to thank again Dominic and Morale from the Michigan Daily. And there's a reminder that there's food and drinks in the back while we wait. But thanks again for the debate.
Indeed. That was after the last one. I just listened to this one again. On this computer.
All right. Yes. Okay. So next the same thing. Next one. 9 questions. All right. Great.
Good to meet you, constituent.
How are you? Yeah. Was it?
Like I talked about $50 minimum wage, and like we just got the results back. Median housing is $60 median it's like even with students are going to be able to afford housing much less than anyone else is not. So yeah, I was and then they yeah, no, to like experience. And I took that and I was like, why don't you do that?
I saw
I right now. Yeah, I did 4 on the last one.
So, like, it needs to be like carefully.
I see there's a lot of consideration.
Right, exactly.
This is a gym for classes.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it's written in Nielsen. Well, I'll go back to referencing it after.
No, not actually. We have that. So.
And I thought to be honest, I took too much time. Good job.
Yeah, this particular one. Because they're not being, the reason unusually is that usually they're part of organizers. In this particular case, or already outlined with them. It's the candidates that they gave us.
Or maybe a
Oh.
Oh, I mean, you can go. We're, I don't think we're gonna ever.
Yeah. Hi, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Austin Glass. I'm CSG's counsel. It's nice to meet you. Thank you so much for your interest in serving students and participation in all of this. Yeah, of course. I mean, it's my pleasure. It's my passion, so I enjoy it. And I'm always glad to see others who are passionate about it as well. So thank you very much. Good to meet you. Yeah. Yes.
It's going to be fun. Right?
Oh, you're so good. How are you?
Yeah, fine, thanks. In a few minutes, not really.
Day one is really it's not in spirit, but I think that I mean, I have one last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Of course. Anyway. That one, that's on Washington Ave. Yeah, that's over here.
Oh, no. He's actually talking about it. I mean, if you're worried about ethics, that's what I was waiting for you guys. No.
I'm so sorry. I did not know there was like a thing with the.
It's not a thing. The only reason, like usually it's a thing. We usually don't eat food like when we're invited to events or stuff. The difference here is that like this is being provided by other people we're covering.
Okay.
It's being provided by like CSG generally.
Got it. Okay.
So now it's,
Well, now I know.
well, also we sort of were already being like part of the organizing team for this. I feel like any ethics we had are gone. Yeah.
gonna try to do that. Yeah, thank you.
All right, if we want to get started. Aaron Paul. The candidates are ready. You can step up the podium. All right, everybody. I'm Aaron Paul, the Director of Debate here at UM. I'd like to welcome you to the 2022 CSG Vice Presidential Debate. I think there are some of you in the audience that maybe weren't here for the first one, so I just want to go over the rules. We've got about 45 minutes for this Vice Presidential Debate. There's going to be 90-second opening statements by each candidate. And then we have the Michigan Daily, Dominic Folletti and Morelli Patel are going to ask about 9 questions to both the candidates, and you have about a minute or a minute and a half to answer each question. I'll randomly determine the order of the opening and closing statements and the order in which you answer each question. And everyone kind of silence your cell phones if you have those. A reminder that the election date is March 30th and 31st. But it looks like everyone's here, so I will do the introductions. First, to my right, Jackie Hillman is running for vice president with the Envision Blue Party. She's a junior studying philosophy, politics, and economics in the LSNA Honors Program and minoring in business administration and the Ross School of Business. Serves on executive boards of Michigan Political Consulting and Flip Blue. She's also worked at the California State Senate for Senator Josh Becker. Next, Ron Berger is a transfer student in the College of Literature, Science, and the Arts, pursuing a degree in law, justice, and social change. He's involved in several organizations, including student government, and has worked with several advisory boards, committees, and task forces. All right, so we have 90 seconds for the first opening statement, and that is Ron.
Firstly, hello to my friends, our guests, and even some enemies out there. My name is Roland Vergage. My preferred name is Ron. I go by he, they pronouns. I am a first-generation, non-traditional immigrant transfer student at the University of Michigan. I am here asking your humble support and your votes in my executive ticket for vice president for student government. I have a lot of experience with student government. I have a lot of experience with multiple groups here, and I'm here with Eric Nelson as we fight to make a positive difference at the university. Well, a couple of things to know about me is that when it comes down to it, we are the team that will strive to make it happen on the street, in the classroom, and out the boardroom. Whether it's meeting with protesters outside, students in our office, or the admin, or the regents, we're there for you guys. We believe in fighting for the students because we are students, with the students, to build a better future for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jackie?
So hi everyone, I'm Jackie and I'm running for the position of vice president with my good friend Noah Zimmerman. I'm running under the same principles that Noah is, which really brought us together in our partnership. I believe in translating advocacy projects into direct student interventions in their lives. I see the needs of a lot of my friends on campus who come from a very diverse range of backgrounds and that constantly face day-to-day issues that are very easily solvable by CSG. But there's no one currently working together to most efficiently address those things and put solutions into place that help in students' lives. I come from a very outside perspective. I've never been on CSG. I don't have the kind of institutional knowledge that Noah has. However, I believe that my experiences being deeply involved in the University of Michigan community and my experiences working in the state senate make me equipped for this role to understand that outside perspective and have really innovative solutions for problems that students face that were previously not thought to be possible through CSG. I hope to talk about a few of those today, and I'm very honored to be part of the Envision Blue platform to really emphasize that message of leaders invest.
Thank you. I'd like to turn it over now to the Michigan Daily for the first question.
The university has committed to eliminating emissions across all 3 campuses by 2040. Many community members and organizations, such as the Climate Action Movement, are critical of this, urging the university to place a speedier deadline and to combating climate change, and doing so by 2030 instead. The Office of Campus Sustainability reports that the university has reduced emissions by 24% this year. In addition to the pledge by the university to achieve carbon neutrality, how will you work to improve sustainability on UM's campus to address the concerns the campus community has raised?
And Jackie is first.
I remember my freshman year, I'd walk to the Ugly late at night and I'd see chalked up kind of statements about divestments in fossil fuel energy. And that was something that really shocked me because I didn't realize that activism was such a prominent role of student life here at the University of Michigan. I believe that that's so important to have protests, to really advocate for needs, especially when it comes to such a pertinent issue as climate change. But solutions are only possible when working with the administration efficiently. There are so many initiatives that are currently underway that are not being efficiently instituted into our programming with students. Students don't know where those resources are. They're not really accessible from what CSG is doing and what the administration is doing as a whole. And we hope, Noah and I, to bridge that gap between the top level resources and then student activism in order to promote ideas that students have that the administration hasn't thought of and make those administrative decisions more accessible to students.
Thank you. Ron?
Excellent. So I'd like to expand on that scope a little bit. When it comes down to it, the sustainability crisis that we're facing isn't just a school range crisis. It's an international, it's a global crisis that we're facing. And one of the things that our administration will focus on is dealing with the admin, but also dealing with the local leaders in the community. Because we don't want just the university to be carbon neutral. We want to also focus on Ann Arbor as well. There's several possibilities for students to work inside campus and outside campus to help with sustainability efforts. Some of these include talking to your local landlords, tenants unions, and telling them to do the green power initiatives with the local energy companies, doing public power initiatives here at the city, and even partnering up with the university, telling them we need more public power options and we need more sustainable renewable options, but also anti-pollution efforts. Something as simple as putting compost bins across classrooms, having more awareness raised, having more groups get hands-on with the beautification of our campus. We have a great campus here, and we can strive to make it better. And as far as the sustainability issue goes, I think 2030 is way too late. I think we need to do something sooner. I know we have the resources to do it, and we need to put the pressure on the administration to make it happen quicker. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 2.
A report by the Michigan Daily discovered that students have a preference for telehealth clinics. In addition, organizations such as Wolverine Consulting Network and SAPAC aim to lead peer-led approaches to mental health services to discover students and help students feel less intimidated from professional help. What are some challenges you see with mental health services offered on campus during the pandemic? How will you ensure these challenges are addressed in your campaign?
And Ron is first.
Thank you so much for that question. One of the things I'd like to let everybody know here is that there are great initiatives such as CAPS, Wolverine's Wellness, Wolverine Support, me being in those programs as well that have helped out. And there's always more that can be done. There are texting programs for students that have the anxiety of going in person, or don't wish to talk to somebody with auditory. They'd rather text, that's fine. The more avenues we can open up, the more programs that we can benefit from, the more help we can push out there to help students based on their specific need to get the help they need to fight through the isolation or the depression or the anxiety that they had, not just caused by the pandemic, but even prior to. When it comes down to it, this is a humanitarian thing. And the more avenues we can open up, the more lives we could potentially save. That's what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Jackie?
I know every year we fill out a survey that asks whether or not we feel valued as an individual member of this community. This is such a daunting space to be in, a school of 50,000 students plus, and it can feel hard to find those resources that can intervene on a one-to-one basis. I also believe that the failures of the past administration have created massive distrust within the student body, myself included. As a woman, I definitely understand that it might not be the safest option to talk to people that I thought were confidential reporters of these incidents. But I believe that it's CSG's role to be that bridge between the administration, who has these top-level decisions, and the student body organizations that are doing such great work, including CAPS, including WSN, so many other orgs on campus that are hands-on on the ground with students to really rebuild that trust next year. As Noah mentioned during his portion, we believe in working with the new administration and this transition to do so, and to better financially allocating resources for students to not have wait times, to be connected directly to people that they can trust and that they can confide in.
Thank you. Question number 3, please.
Just last week, the Daily reported CSG has added the New York Times game subscription to its catalog of news subscriptions. This subscription provides all UM students free access to the full-size daily crossword, Wordle, and other mini games. It was implemented after seeing increased demand from students for NYT subscriptions last year. In what ways does your campaign plan to expand upon current resources provided students by CSG?
And Jackie is first.
It may seem trivial to think about games such as Wordle having a real impact on student lives, but I do believe that creating more accessibility to resources and having that equity within like different socioeconomic brackets in our student body will really allow for connection across different identities. It's within like those entertainment services and fun games like that people connect. There are people in my professional organizations that will literally be in a group chat where we send the Wordle every day. There are just students that are really involved in different TV shows, different initiatives like that, and it does cultivate that sense of community. We already have such great access to sports and other events on campus. Why can't we extend that to other areas? Performing arts, music, other things that students are passionate about, and really emphasize accessibility for everyone, regardless of cost.
Thank you. Ron?
First off, a lot of what you said I agree with, so thank you for that. And to expand on that, I also want to mention that a lot of these things come down to negotiations. When it comes down to it, we look at it as a fun game. We look at it as a cool opportunity to hang out with friends or mention things, but it's a business negotiation. They're benefiting, we're benefiting. And I believe that when it comes to these negotiations, the stronger we negotiate, including our expanded student base up to 50,000 plus now, the more negotiating power we have. With this negotiating power, I believe that it's not only our interest, but our best duty to expand as many potential resources to students. I've had a lot of students come up and ask me, why NYT? Why can't we go to Netflix or Hulu or something? And I'm like, that's a great question. Let's explore those options when we talk and see what the negotiation process is. The more options we give to the students, let them choose what they want. Let them choose what they want to do with it. And that's our duty here, is to make as many options as possible for you guys.
Thank you. And now to question number 4.
In their meeting on January 11th, CSG passed a resolution in support for the pass no record grading system for the winter 2022 semester. The previous COVID-19 grading system allowed students to elect after the semester if they wanted to convert a letter grade to no record or pass. The move was welcomed by many students, but others argued. However, with the return to in-person learning in fall 2021, COVID-19 grading policies have expired. If elected, how will your platform ensure there are continued efforts in accommodating the classroom environment?
And Ron is first.
So this is actually something I'm very passionate about. When I was elected representative, it was actually one of the biggest things I wanted to improve was the academic relationship between us and the university. For those unfamiliar with NRC, essentially what it is you can request a no record COVID. There was also a withdrawal policy that was very generous to us, which allowed us to withdraw all the way up to the last day of the class. And personally, and this is pre-COVID, I've been a big proponent pushing for this to be a permanent policy. I want everyone that takes a class to have the option to be able to withdraw it up to the last day. I want people to have the option to grade change should that particular school within the guidelines allow it. I believe that these are our classes that we're taking. This is our time we're investing. This is our life that we're putting into these to learn this stuff. And things happen. People get sick, people get hurt, they lose their job, their family moves. Life happens to all of us. We should have the right up to the last day of class for whatever reason we choose not to be discriminated against by the university or by an advisor, but up to us to say, hey, this isn't the class, this isn't right for me. I want to withdraw, and I do not want it to impact my record negatively. And I think that is a change that if we start here officially and make it a permanent policy, you will see others adopt it. And that's what it means, part of being a leader in the best.
Thank you. Jackie?
I think the impacts of COVID are really long lasting. People don't really talk about long-term COVID. People don't talk about the impacts that COVID has had on their social well-being, on their emotional well-being. Those things don't just go away now that we can be in a classroom without a mask, or we can't even do that. We can be in a building without a mask. Once borders are completely let down when it comes to the health guidelines on campus, these issues don't go away, and the students that are still suffering will continue to suffer. I believe that it's CSG's role not only to provide more resources for mental health and wellness in order to combat some of these issues that individuals are inevitably going to face, but also to reevaluate the look that the university places on these really, catastrophic circumstances that can happen in a student's life. Like Ron said, I believe that this policy should be expanded in order to accommodate circumstances. I personally was in a really bad accident on State Street my freshman year, 2 weeks before finals, and it was really hard to gain accessibility accommodations in that frame of time for finals. I believe working with Students for Disabilities, working with the student life organizations on campus and the Dean of Students, we can really promote resources to help these students who are going through challenging times and institute these policies long term.
Thank you. And let's go to question number 5, please.
Even before former university president Mark Schlissel was fired earlier this semester due to an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, students reported high levels of mistrust of the administration and specifically of Schlissel. How do you plan to encourage trust between the university president and students?
Jackie's first.
Noah emphasized this earlier, but I really believe that the key to this issue is transparency. Right now, there is no accountability for the Board of Regents and for the upper levels of administration, including the president, to make their processes transparent, to make their policies transparent to the student body. But CSG has such a unique position, particularly president and vice president, to work directly with those individuals and to hold them accountable. I think that while no one is infallible, it's important to learn from mistakes and move forward in a way that's going to be more accessible to students. And that can directly happen through facilitated interactions with the administration and promoting of these, changes to the whole student body. There should be no barriers in between top level decisions and student body knowledge on that, because students are impacted on a day-to-day basis. It is a student life issue, these huge decisions that the administration makes, whether they like it or not. So it's our duty in order to facilitate that connection and bridge the gap between the student body and the administration in that way.
And Ron's next.
I think it's no shocker when it comes down to the trust issue we have with the admin. I think any student on the street would really know that. It's heartbreaking, it's disappointing, because you'd think better at this university in particular. I agree with a lot of the sentiments that have been said with these two. I also agree with a lot of sentiments that have been said before for years now. Accountability, transparency. We need to hold them accountable. We need to know what's going on. And unfortunately, as much as we try, we still haven't made as much progress as we need to make. When it comes down to the trust we have with the admin, as far as I'm concerned, trust is broken. It needs to be rebuilt. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen with their precious meetings blocking us out. It's going to happen with full transparency, opening meetings to all students that want to come through, that all students that want to see. No more just private CSG meetings, no more just private with regents. We're all students. Their actions impact our lives directly. We should all have the right to see what's going on at these meetings, to know what's going on, to be informed, and to even get our feedback put back to them. Some people call this revolutionary, some people call it crazy. I just call it common sense. And I think if we want to restore trust with the admin, we need to force transparency and demand it. And we have to push for accountability where we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Recently, the university updated their mask policy, making masks optional in most indoor spaces on campus. Do you believe the university has made the correct decision? And how do you hope to help students manage the transition as COVID-19 restrictions continue to be lifted? In your answer, please address how your campaign will also support students who have been affected by COVID-19.
And Ron is first.
So with the loosening of restrictions and thankfully the drop in cases, this is something we should celebrate. But that doesn't mean we should not be vigilant. As anyone will tell you, with strains, they can change like that. In drop of a hat, we could have new mandates. We have to listen to our experts, our public health experts, what they say at the university. We have to understand the science that goes behind it. And we also have to be sympathetic to the students that are afflicted, because it is heartbreaking and tragic. It could affect anybody, it could spread, and it could get worse. But when it comes down to it, is with this combination of things, we can proceed forward. We should be cautious, we should be vigilant, we should be understanding, and we should be respectful of what both the scientific and the medical resources are telling us. So I think it's awesome that we don't have to wear masks indoor anymore. I still support other people that want to. You'll usually see me with the mask on anyway. But I think that vigilance is key and understanding is vital.
Thank you. Jackie.
I don't purport to be a healthcare professional. I'm not a public health major, so I am not a qualified person to say whether or not a policy is justified on our campus. But we should defer to those individuals for the latest guidance on what exactly is safest for our students. Going off of that, I believe that a huge issue that students have encountered is a stigmatization around getting sick. Professors have individual guidelines for how they handle COVID cases in their classrooms, and a lot of those guidelines are not very equitable for students. It makes them feel ashamed for having COVID. It calls them out in the middle of class, and it's not very accessible while you're sick to have to do extra work to make up for what's missed. I don't believe that those are equitable procedures, and nothing is uniform within the university for professors to mandate having a hybrid option, to allow students to have a day to take time and not have to do work for a class. These are things that actionably CSG can intervene and change and make uniform within each school of this university so that students have more access to healthcare, so that students don't feel bad about having to go to North Campus immediately when they receive a positive result, so they have someone to coach them through the entire process of having COVID. COVID doesn't just end for some people after their 5-day isolation period. It's a long-term disease, and it's important to provide resources throughout that entire experience for students on campus.
Thank you. Next question, please.
Since October of 2020, over 1,000 survivors of sexual misconduct of Lake University athletic Dr. Robert Anderson have come forward. After 15 months of mediation between survivors and the university, a $490 million settlement was reached. If elected, how do you plan to support student survivors of sexual misconduct and work to increase sexual assault prevention on campus?
And Jackie's first.
I believe that this is a really large issue and failure of our university. And I see my friends that go to other schools that have much greater resources for handling issues of sexual misconduct and assault. I really am proud of the strides that our university has made through student advocacy for intervening in these situations, for making bystander awareness and intervention a core component of what we try to do to support one another. But I also believe that in orientation, we click through a module and it goes one in air and out the other. It's really hard to spot those signs, and that's really the first step. I believe in hiring practices being reformed through CSG in order to have safer individuals for people who have survived sexual assault to confide in. It's really challenging to make that decision, and if you're placed on a wait list, that makes you even less, able to share your story and to seek the proper resources available. So we really want to rebuild that trust and tap into the resources that have already been provided, and then, as Noah mentioned earlier, work with the new administration coming in during this transition to bolster those programming.
Thank you. Ron?
So this is very personal. Being a survivor myself of sexual assault and molestation, this hit very deeply. I remember the first time meeting John when he was just starting his protest on the second day. I remember seeing this man start up there, walk up. I had my phone ready because I see that the authorities are coming after there. And I'm like, you know what? My pre-law's gonna kick in. I'm gonna help this guy out. After meeting the man, talking to him, talking to Chuck, talking to Ted, talking to Tony, going to the protest, being out there in front of what was then Schlissel's house, knocking on the door, having the megaphone, passing out the t-shirts, bringing in food, getting a coffee ready, whatever we could do to support these guys in the amazing cause that they're doing. It really hit home. It hit personal. And I realized that this problem is so much deeper than the surface layer we see. A lot of people are under the misconception that because there's been a settlement, the issue is over, it's disappeared. But a lot of people don't even realize that the equipment that was in front of now Mary Sue Coleman's house didn't just magically disappear. The survivors didn't just take their stuff and go home. It was actually confiscated by the university. And that's another problem that we'll be facing soon. A lot of people don't realize that just because there's a settlement that's been reached hasn't been dispersed or finalized. This is an ongoing battle. This is a cultural problem here at the university. This is a cultural problem with the admin. And the more that they do to protect the perpetrators, and the more they do to ignore the students and the victims, the worse this problem will get. I think we've been nice for a long time asking them. I think we've done countless meetings with them. I think it's time that we demand change from them. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 8, please.
What does inclusivity mean to you? How do you plan to ensure inclusivity and uplifting minoritized voices across campus communities?
And Ron is first.
I love this question because this is one of the biggest aspects of our platform. When it comes down to it, you've heard it before, we are the diverse and dedicated platform. We preach diversity and we preach dedication. When it comes down to inclusivity, I want you guys to know that inclusivity is a must. It's vital. Because when you look around at your boardroom, you look around at your classroom, you look around at your team, if everyone talks and thinks the same and looks the same, you got a problem there. The beauty that is diversity is what makes us strong. One of the biggest things that you might have seen me and Erica do is we've went to the meetings, we've given speeches, and most importantly, we've listened. We've asked. We wanted to get to know. We get invited back. They give us standing ovation. We want to know, what can we do for you guys? What do you guys want to see here? And how can we lift your voices? We'll tell you, we can lift your voices. Easiest thing to do. Give them a seat at the table. This is when our meeting is. This is what we'll be discussing. Come through as a guest. We want your input. We want to know what you guys think. There's a bunch of amazing groups on campus of all sorts of identities. And me being a first generation immigrant non-traditional student. Erica being a proud woman of color, traditional student. Together, we are making this happen, and we will see change for the better. And that starts with listening and bringing them in. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Noah and I have 30 pragmatic policies that we will institute when elected. If we are given this place, we don't take that lightly. I will not consider a single policy a success if it does not emphasize and make one of the greatest priorities diversity, equity, and inclusion. The only way that we can do that is by listening to diverse student voices. Right now, CSG structure, the executive branch can be built out in any way that the new executives see fit. One thing that I really want to prioritize is specifically reaching out to individuals who are prominent advocates, who are students that are members of minority groups, and getting them in the door, making them part of our core policy team in order to ensure that DEI is central to how we affect student lives. That is the only way I will see our administration doing the actual work that is requisite for this community, is by including all voices. Otherwise, that would be a failure on my part and on the part of our community as a whole.
And I believe this is question number 9.
After 2.5 semesters of virtual learning, 91% of classes resumed in person last semester. As students return to in-person learning, how will you prioritize fostering stronger relationships with students and mental wellness?
Jackie's first.
Noah talked a lot about this earlier, but I do believe that our current programming, including CAPS, WSN, and Wolverine Wellness, are vital to helping our students go through this period of transition. Going back to in-person classes is really exciting, but also poses a host of new challenges to students. Students that have disabilities that might make it harder for them to show up to class in person. Students that are struggling mentally and don't feel that they can manage the course load after coming from a hybrid semester. These are real issues that are not considered by professors, or not considered by students, and it can be really stigmatizing for students who are affected in this way. I believe that emphasizing mental health resources and creating programming for peers to directly talk one-on-one with their allies in order to access the right resources is really, really requisite to handling this issue. I also believe that partnering with Student Life on campus, and that department particularly, in order to allow especially new freshmen who are encountering a host of other challenges to access those resources, build that into their class schedule, and understand how to balance their work life and their health is really important for fostering a community of leaders and best.
Thank you, Ron.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Mental health is key. Without our mental health, everything else is here. You've listed great programs. We all support them. I'm glad to see that we're on the same page on that. But that's not enough. The pilot program is coming. It's not going to be enough. We need more avenues. We need more programs. We also need more support for these programs. No one wants to go and wait hours at CAPS. It's too long. No one wants to apply for Wolverine Support Network and have to wait 2-3 weeks to jump in a cohort. It's not enough. These programs need our support, not just for the students that are suffering, but all too often we forget about our lecturers, grad students, our professors, faculty. This has impacted all of us. Mental health isn't just specifically impacting us. It impacts everyone. It affects everyone together. By supporting these programs and expanding on more of them, we are able to make a true difference in the lives of every one of us here. Isolation and loneliness is a big driving factor. The disconnection that we have, Zoom has helped, sure, but it doesn't replace the in-person interaction. The more we can do, the more we can save people, the more of a difference we can make. And one of the groups that I was in wasn't just Wolverine Support Network, it was also the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And it breaks my heart when we lose a student, because one student lost is too many. So I hope we can make a difference and really ramp up these programs so we don't ever lose a student again. Thank you.
Thank you. Am I correct that that's the 9 questions that have been asked today? All right, I just have one question since we have a little time left. What do you think of the tenure so far of interim president Marissa Coleman, and what, if anything, could she do to kind of improve upon that? And we'll do Ron first.
Being a student that actually wasn't here during Marissa Coleman's term, I've heard a lot of positive and negative. I've read through some of the records, and it's interesting what you see. Look at the interim president do now. One of the first things that I was very disappointed was this committee, this presidential search committee, and the lack of student representation on there. I couldn't believe that we had one student, yet we're 50,000 strong here, I couldn't believe if you want to make a true difference and you want to pick a president that's best for the students, give us a voice. And do you guys want to quote me on this directly to Mary Sue? Let her know that I'm requesting an expansion of student spots, in particular for the Presidential Search Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
I agree with you, Ron, about the Presidential Search Committee. I think that that's vital to reupholding our values as a community as we transition to next year. I do believe it's really hard to come into an interim position in any capacity. And one of the best ways to facilitate that and really make the best of that situation is to have direct avenues to student voices. It's really challenging for an administrator to do so, but I think as the CSG executive, Noah and I will be those direct pipelines to the administration. We want to listen to student voices, no matter what background, no matter what school. I want to hear those voices. I want to have empathy for the situations that students are in and bring those directly to the top levels of administration. Otherwise, student voices are silenced. Students are not represented from various communities, and the administration can't act when they don't understand the issues that students are facing on a daily basis. So I believe regardless of who our president is, it's really vital for the CSG executive to play a role in facilitating those connections and advocating for those issues directly to that top level so that some of these institutional harms can be remedied and we can forge a better future.
Thank you. And before the closing statements, just like from the presidential debate, I'd like to offer the opportunity for each of you to ask each other a question. Jackie, you can ask the question of Ron first.
So Ron, I know you're running for LSA student government as well. If you were to be elected to both LSA student government and central student government, how would you balance that? And how do you think that that would kind of connect?
Great question. Thank you so much. So should we be honored to receive love and support from you guys in the university to be double elected? We would break history twice. I want you guys to know this. It wouldn't just be the first dual election won. It would be also the first time the university has ever had a Black female president that can actually directly connect with minority students here and make the difference we need. When it comes to balancing it, if anything, we love the students. We are students. We want to see a difference in our lives. And we're very passionate. The drive we have for this, the amount of energy that we are putting into this to make the difference happen is something like you guys have never seen before. And I love and support some of the good things that you guys are doing. And I hope in the future, one way or the other, that you guys will stick to those promises and put in the work to make the difference.
Thank you. And Ron, do you have a question for Jackie?
I have a question in particular for Jackie, for Noah, for the group. One of the biggest things that we pride ourselves is integrity. So the race we run, the people we have in our party, the groups we have, the people we associate with. We don't have a party in particular because it's not something we really supported. But also comes the problems with bad party members. All too often, we've had issues with rumors against our ticket, other members. And I just want to know, what is your awareness of these allegations, rumors, accusations, and attacks? And do you condemn them or do you condone them? And what steps are you taking within your own party to stop this from happening? So you don't run, quote unquote, smear campaign. So you can stay honest and truthful.
So I believe that in any campaign, whether student government or in the real world, integrity is of the utmost importance. If a candidate is elected, regardless from what side, it's important that they don't start off on the wrong foot of having a dirty campaign and running on the wrong principles. We believe that our party, we've really tried to listen to everyone's voices and come together with a coalition of students that share our values for directly impacting students' lives. I really am proud of the work that we've already purported to accomplish, and I do believe that our party members are working really hard in order to not only facilitate our own points of view, but also listen to your guys' points of view. Everyone who's passionate about students, we want that to be the solution. It's not about individual pride or ego, but doing what's best for our community. And I'm really proud of my running mate as well as my entire campaign for emphasizing that already and doing so in the future.
Thank you. So now let's move on to the closing statements. Jackie will be first, and you have up to 2 minutes.
So thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it, and for listening to our perspectives today. I want to reemphasize exactly why I'm running for this role. As an outsider, I see how often CSG resources are not accessible to the community. I understand that the only way that we can be a more productive and inclusive community is by collaborating with student groups, collaborating with the administration, and coming together as a community. COVID especially, and a lot of the recent misfortunes in our community have really exposed our school as a weak and disconnected entity. And I feel that, I think you all feel that too. That's something that is one of our biggest goals to address. And we will help unify that community through listening directly to student voices. I want to reemphasize the point of being open as a resource to any student who has an issue and directly, pragmatically handling that issue. Student lives are of utmost importance. Our 4 years in college are not just so we can get a good job coming out of college. They're to really grow as people, to find a community, and to make lasting connections. And I believe that Michigan is the place where we can do that, but only with the help of one another. Instead of being divisive, we need to come together and envision the same ideals that our university stands on. Right now, those ideals are not being put into practice, but we believe that through our actionable steps, that can be the case. So again, I'm honored to be running with Envision Blue. I'm honored to represent our ideals, and I really hope that I can best make a change in each one of your lives as well as every other student on this campus.
And Ron.
When it comes down to it, we're here to ask for your humble support, your vote, and your love. We understand that when it comes right to the core of the issue, we are what the university needs. We're diverse, we're dedicated, we're driven, we're compassionate, we're ready. We have the experience to do this. We have the will and drive. We know how to get done from top to bottom, from admin to the streets, from the protests to the classrooms. We have what it takes. And as a sign of good faith, we're going to reach out a hand to not just our opposite executive ticket, but to everybody else running. We want to know that whether win, lose, or draw, we're here to keep fighting for the students. We're here to keep making a difference. And we won't stop at this. If we're fortunate enough to get the blessing and love that you guys give us, and we succeed in this, that just means we'll fight that much harder. And if we don't, we'll still be out there fighting to make a difference. We know that there's a lot of work to be done. We know there's a lot of changes that need to be done. We see the injustices that occur at this university. We see the problems that happen. We see the admin that protects itself and protects its favorites. And we see how degenerative and horrible it is. And part of being the leaders and the best isn't just putting a little pin on, wearing a hat, wearing a t-shirt, dressing up in maize and blue. No, it's about going out there, putting in the work, meeting the people, making the connections, listening, and making the difference. So come election time, I humbly ask for your support. I humbly ask for your vote. Give us a chance. Get to know us if you don't. For all the friends out there, welcome. For all the guests out there, welcome. For all the enemies out there, welcome. We'll make the time to talk to you. We'll make the time to get to know you. We'll make the time to work with you. And we will make the change that needs to happen because we want to be the change we want to see. Vote diverse and dedicated. Vote Eric and Ron. Let's make history together. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates. Thanks to everyone for attending the debates. That concludes tonight's debates. Thanks to Caroline for setting all this up. Dominic and Raleigh for asking great questions. And Michigan Daily for live streaming events. But thanks everyone and good luck to Michigan basketball tonight beat Villanova. Yeah, thank you.